Welcome to Talk Branding to Me, the podcast for women building intentional businesses and brands rooted in strategy, not just aesthetics.
Branding doesn't have to feel overwhelming. It's more than design. It's how strategy and style come together to create an identity, build trust, and stand out.
We're your hosts, Jamie Wright of Embellish Brands
and Jessie Ford of Untethered Design Studio.
We're brand strategists, designers, and friends who turned our coffee chats into honest conversations about branding done right
and wrong.
If you're feeling stuck or unsure about your brand, you're in the right place.
And now, let's talk branding. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Talk Branding to Me podcast. My name is Jessie, and I am here with my co-host, Jamie. And today we are talking all about legacy brands. So you might wonder, what is a legacy brand? Well, it's definitely a brand that everyone in the world is probably most likely familiar with. Think major corporations, global brands, not even products or places. It might be an iconic person. It is that type of brand that is basically globally known. It's familiar. It's been around a long time. Any kind of major corporation or business or even celebrity, historical figure, what have you, that you can think of is most likely tied to being a legacy brand. Now, what's interesting, Jamie, is I actually did a little bit of research when we were sort of planning out some of these episodes and what we would be talking about, just to kind of collect my thoughts a little bit. And I will say that there was an article I found online that mentioned a legacy brand is usually considered to be older than 25 years, like 25 and up. So I'm not sure if you have seen any of that same information or how legit that is. I know vintage makes something sound like it's really old or classic, but I think that there is some kind of statistic around something being 25 or 30 and older. It kind of falls into or under that category rather. So I think it's kind of an interesting way to think about it. Think of brands, Nike, Coca-Cola, Campbell's, Disney, Ralph Lauren, Apple. I mean, everything imaginable. It can also be a person. I know that we had compiled a list here where we consider Steven Spielberg, all his movies, Stephen King and his books, authors and speakers and TV and movie producers, filmmakers, directors, authors, iconic people, iconic places, Yellowstone National Park. That is a brand. That is an entity along with other national parks. The Olympics. At the time of recording, it's kind of timely. We are in the midst of watching the Winter Olympics, which I know we'll touch on here in a little bit, just because the Olympics are is a brand in and of itself. The Summer Olympics, kind of a sub-brand. The Winter Olympics, kind of a sub-brand. And where the Olympics fall and the locations that they're in. Each Olympic event becomes its own individual brand. These brands that everyone knows in the world, in the marketplace, and they can be corporations, they can be organizations. I think of nonprofits too, or think of the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Clubs. Think of it from an organizational perspective, famous people, historical figures even, presidents, government officials. I mean, just brands that are rooted in history and rooted deeply in our culture, really all around the world, no matter where you are. I think that's really what a legacy brand is. And it's easily recognized. It kind of goes without saying that most people probably know what it is without even seeing a logo, just seeing the name or someone just speaking about it. Your mind automatically connects with it being a well-known brand.
Yeah. And I will even add to this experiences could be brands too. Think Formula One, Indianapolis 500, Major League Baseball. We also actually talked in a previous episode about the Savannah Bananas, just this type of game that they're playing. There's a lot of ways that I think we could look at brands and even consider what makes them significant enough to be considered a legacy brand. In my own research and figuring out how to approach today's topic, I really loved something that I read that described brands as their legacy brands, rather, as those that have just essentially stayed relevant across decades, generations. And to your point, Jessie, whether we define a legacy brand as it's at least 25 years old or at least 30 years old, I think there's something to that where we might want to consider something that lasts at least for a couple of decades is a criteria point for defining what a legacy brand is, because if it's able to last that long and if it's able to appeal to more than one generation, if it's able to survive culture and the shifts that happen within culture, even, political, social, economic shifts, if brands are able to survive and adapt in order to survive, but if they're able to maintain their existence, changing things along the way as they need to in order to survive, then they're proving to us that they have what it takes to stick it out for the long run. That's something that I really love about this concept of legacy brands and studying them from a branding and marketing perspective to learn from them. They're not setting it and forgetting it. There's no way you can set it and forget it and expect to survive. You have got to constantly be monitoring the culture, monitor the environment, monitor the marketplace, and everything that's going on, and make intentional decisions. Try some stuff, see what sticks, see what fails, you try again. But making shifts over time that are good, that will continue to resonate with their brand's audience, which then keeps them around. That's what I love so much about legacy brands is just learning from the icons, learning from those who have shown us what is possible and showing us that it is possible to stay relevant, using those as great examples that maybe let's take some ideas from them and try them for ourselves and see what happens.
Yeah, I love that. I think that because we are so close to branding, obviously, being brand professionals, designers, strategists, what have you, we also recognize these different entities and individuals as being brands where maybe an everyday person not involved with branding, I don't know that they even look at it and necessarily always call it a brand. It's such an innate, like automatic, that's just that person, that place, that thing. I think about book series and like movie franchises, characters, even that necessarily aren't real people, but we associate certain real life actors with the characters they play in movies. All these little bits and pieces really are brands and brand assets and small pieces of a larger branding puzzle. I don't think an everyday person on the street, or maybe even some of our listeners necessarily look at these things as being brands, but they really are and rooted so deeply and immersed so deeply in our everyday lives, in everyday culture. Something that's kind of interesting, I know we had sort of written some notes down and some thoughts regarding this topic. I really love what you said. You said, these are not brands built on shelves or storefronts, but on reputation, emotion, and experience. What helps to make these brands last so long? Not everyone loves them, or they're not for everyone. Just because they're known also does not mean that they've not dealt with crises, that they've not hit walls, that they've not had people unfollow them or cancel them, as the term we use in today's world, even temporarily. These brands have definitely been able to grow and evolve over time, but it doesn't mean that they haven't had struggle. They've definitely hit walls. They've definitely had to bounce back. Like you said, just even existing in the world and moving through stages and transitions and history, viruses, wars, like everything that we deal with in this world. A lot of these iconic brands, they go way, way, way back through history. And I know like the Olympics specifically literally goes back to ancient times when it happened. So it's just kind of interesting to look at, okay, these brands have existed for so long, some longer than others, but what makes them last so long? Is it because, like a person, is it just reputation? People relate to them, connect with them, they stay relevant, like you already mentioned. What is it about them that I think it's regardless of if it's a brand that sells a product, or that provides a service, even like some of our listeners and their businesses, regardless of what you do, you are a brand, personal or business wise, or maybe a blend of the two. But your brand is built on experience and expertise and your knowledge and how you connect with clients and customers. You have a reputation with people. So bringing this back to how does it relate to someone just listening to this podcast right now? How does it allow for branding in general to be more accessible and more approachable? There are so many lessons that we can take from these iconic brands, right? So I guess what are your thoughts on how we can look at this like a case study? What lessons do we learn from these brands? What is that it factor or factors that make them last so long that we can sort of take pages out of their books to maybe help our little baby brands also stand the test of time?
Well, Jesse, you asked some great questions, and I think that is a big part of the process of doing a case study. And that's something actually we wanted to bring together for our listeners today is this idea of studying brands and learning from these brands that have clearly done something right. They've adapted and they've overcome over the years to maintain relevancy today. If we want to build brands that are similar, obviously it's going to take time, but if taking our baby brands, as you called them, and managing them well to grow them into something that is a legacy brand at some point, maybe it's a brand that you want to sell. Maybe it's a brand that you want to pass down to your children. Whatever the circumstance is, if you are at a place where you want to build something that's lasting, then how do you do that? We believe one of those ways is by looking at those who have done things well and learning from their examples. Um, in evaluating what these other companies have done, I'm recommending that you look at specific problems that they experience. We don't necessarily change something that's working. We tend to change the things that have stopped working. It would be interesting when looking at a company to just do some research and see, what kind of things were they experiencing on the negative side of the spectrum. What did they do to try to overcome it? What were the results of that? Because not everything is a hit the first time you do something. So again, looking at what they did, was it successful? Was it not? Why or why not? And then ultimately, what was the outcome? And by doing a little bit of an analysis that way, and I realize we're bordering on branding not being sexy by talking about doing an analysis like this, but it's really critical to understand the strategy so you can learn from it. Then once you kind of have understood what their experience has been, then you can compare that to your own. What are the similarities between your brand and their brand? What are the differences between the two? And then consider whether their approach is something that could be applied to your own brand. And this could be a marketing strategy. It could be a customer outreach that they've done that you want to try for yourself. Maybe it's some kind of advertising gimmick of some sorts where it just really got them a lot of attention and you think maybe it could work for you too. So it could honestly be anything that you're looking at from a legacy brand. But you don't need to do everything that they've done. Every brand is unique and they're supposed to be that way on purpose. And that's how you stand out and that's how you eventually maybe attain that legacy brand status. As you're looking at their examples, don't do it all. Take the best ideas that will work for you and then leave the rest. As a general rule of thumb, when you are changing things in your marketing or advertising or even just general branding strategy, you don't want to change everything all at once. You want to pick a few or even just one big thing and go all in on figuring that out. Once you've got that under your feet, pick something else. And the reason for that is because you want to track your progress on improving that problem that you've had. And if you change a bunch of things at once, it's going to be harder to see which strategy you employed is the one that's working. If you're trying to attack a bunch of problems at once, it's going to be harder to tell which of the problems are being more successfully resolved than the others because you're trying to do too many things at once. That is an approach that I prefer, is to pick a few key things, implement some trial and error and trying to improve those things. And then once you got a handle on those, then you pick a few other issues to try to resolve. And then you kind of rinse and repeat. But through it all, track and monitor your progress there. And this is where data is really important. Use numbers to prove if it's working or not, and then make decisions based on the outcomes that you are experiencing. And don't be afraid to let go of something that really isn't working. Or even if it's maybe just mediocre, it's working a little bit, but it's not great. Don't be afraid to let those things go in favor of trying something that could potentially bring better results in the end. Having said all of that, That's kind of how you do a case study. You analyze what someone else has done. What's the problem they had? What is the solution they implemented? And what were the outcomes? And take those lessons and apply them to yourself. What is the problem you're experiencing? What kind of solution are you going to implement? How's that working out for you? And then you continue adjusting based on that constant analysis, I think. Jesse, do you have anything to add to that?
I was going to say, and this thought just came to me. I think when you are considering these legacy brands, maybe kind of doing mental case studies, taking lessons from them, it allows you to put your CEO hat on and think, not that you're not professional, but like a real pro, like a big brand. You can have your small business. I think this is a really important lesson for listeners right now. Many of you are probably like us. You're a one woman shop, you have a small business, you do well, you can define your own terms of success. You can be as big as you want or, keep things very simple and minimal. It's different for everyone. But I think that you can take these lessons from these bigger brands in terms of the times when you do need to adjust or do things differently. Just mentally check in with yourself. Okay, what would the CEO of Nike do right now? What would the CEO of McDonald's do? Allowing yourself to sort of dream and think a little bit bigger. I think it's just a good practice and exercise, regardless of how metrics wise, how big your business is, whether it's just you or a small team. We're not saying anyone listening here has a brand quite like Nike necessarily, but you can look at the things they've dealt with and overcome. Their stories are out there. Movies have been made about them and things like that, but you can take any of these brands and do some quick Google searches and learn about the times when they have struggled, when they have had bad years, when they've had maybe a not great reputation or something happened or they went through lawsuits or they didn't look good in the media, that type of thing. How did they overcome? It's not a matter of if, but when. They have all throughout history had struggles and they've grown through them. And that's how they are still around and they are still important and they are still relevant and people do still know them and need them and use them. When you're in the moment of pivoting or having a struggle, changing up something, having a moment where it's not been a great experience with a client, or it could be as simple as a bad review left about you
Yeah.
online. And that messes with you and you can lose sleep over that. What would a larger brand that's been through much worse, what would they do? How can I take their experiences and how they've handled things and position it in a way and apply it to what I'm dealing with present day in my small business? I think it's a good practice. It allows you to think of yourself as more of a CEO and as a leader of your brand, an advocate, a steward, all of the things that we talk about on this podcast. Because obviously, these large teams within these major global iconic brands, they have been there, done that, and gone through all the struggles. But you can't have success without hitting the roadblocks and having the hiccups from time to time. So know
Yeah.
that things will happen in your business and within your brand, but I think how you deal with conflict and how you bounce back is what allows you to keep growing and kind of keep becoming bigger and better. So maybe considering what they've done and not done is just a good practice to consider in even your day-to-day management of your business and brand.
I'll add a final thought onto what you just said. All of these legacy brands, they all started somewhere. They all started small for the most part, I would say. They started somewhere and it was in someone's garage. That's Amazon's origin story. Started from a garage or a factory. They all had humble beginnings, but it was the stewardship, it was the intention, it was maybe where opportunity met with hard work, created some momentum, but they all started small. And it was the strategy, it was the management, it was the careful decision making of its leadership. And there were so many things that do factor into how the brand was able to grow and even a level up from that. Then from a bigger picture perspective is all the cultural stuff, all of the generational things that are going on that have to be managed as well. Just outside from a business operation standpoint, a world standpoint, there's so many things to manage, but our goal today isn't to overwhelm you by like the weight of legacy brands and you should be trying to build a legacy brand. That's not at all what we're wanting to say, but rather encourage you if you are in this and you want to build something that's great, something that lasts. It could be something that's 10-year run or maybe it's 20 years. It could be whatever you want it to be because it's your business. For those of you who are looking for something that is going to be around for a while, just remember on the hard days, especially, everybody started somewhere. Every brand started somewhere. It was with that dedication, not giving up when things got hard, but also navigating the fires as they came up. It's not a matter of if, but when. We've said that a lot. It's all of those things. And as the leader of your brand, like you said, Jesse, I'm so glad you brought up the CEO point, but as the CEO of your brand, how you manage those things when they come up, how you navigate through them, your mindset throughout all of it, or your leadership patterns, all of that really does play a role into this brand and whether it's going to grow or shrink over time. And that is where I think if we start mixing the grit of these female business owners that we're talking to today, but we mix it with the experience of others who have gone before us, we're going to get some great stuff out of that. Just building on the lessons that others have learned the hard way, we get the benefit of their experience and having that in hindsight. We get to build on top of that for our own brands. It's exciting to consider where our respective brands could go just by applying some intention and thought to what we're building and how we're building it, and for what purpose, really, that we are building these brands. It's exciting to think what could happen 5 years down the road, 10 years, 20 years. The options are limitless, and I think that's exciting as small business owners. That's why a lot of us decide to, you know, take the easy way out and work for ourselves. That was sarcasm, by the way. Um, but that's why, right? There might be a dream out there. There might be just this hustle in the grid and just wanting to build something meaningful. That's why we get up and we do this every day. And we can dream that all of our hard work will one day be recognized as a legacy brand that others have come to know and love and appreciate across generations. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Wouldn't it? Absolutely. I also I wanna add, being in business, being a business owner and entrepreneur, and I'm also just a bit of a history buff, like, I love reading anything historical related, watching documentaries, all of the things. I love to see the roots of something. How did something start? When? Where? Because every single brand and, like, the ones we mentioned in the beginning and the list just is miles and miles long of legacy brands and what could be considered a legacy brand. What was day one? What did day one look like in that garage when Amazon started? I love the history of any of these brands, any business, any entrepreneur, anyone who has built something, where it started, how and when. I just love any of those stories. Every brand has a story, big or small, and everyone starts somewhere. There is a lot of humility that comes with being a business owner, building a brand day in and day out, and what people see, and most of the time, what they don't see. There are a lot of takeaways that we can consider, lessons learned from these big brands just because they're so known and they're so iconic that can be really applicable to our daily operations and growth, in business.
We're living our origin stories right now.
Well, for me, I I'm celebrating 10 years in business right now. I started Untethered in February of 2016, which I know I mentioned on one of the podcasts when we are kind of talking about how we started our businesses. But it's allowed me to kind of go, wow, a lot has happened, professionally and personally in 10 years, all blended together. Is this something I still love, that I'm still excited about, that I'm still really proud of? Even from a branding perspective, do I still love the name, the values I stand on, the services I offer, the types of clients I work with? For me, I mean, I can't honestly say it just gets better and better as the years go on. I'm excited to see, okay, another 5 years from now, another 10 years from now, just expressing a little bit of gratitude there for a second. But it does allow me to reflect and go, yes, we're talking about these global iconic brands, but what is your legacy brand? What's your definition of that? The legacy that you want to leave behind in building your business and where it ends up when it's all said and done. Just something to think about that I think is really cool.
Such a good thought, Jesse. Whoa, that was a great
Like a
final
little,
thought. Yes.
gets you there in the heart a little bit. But if you know, you know, right? As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, building anything, creating something from scratch, it's literally your baby, and the pride that you take in it. There's nothing quite like it. Well, Jamie, I think that we are at that point in the episode where we are going to wrap up with some final thoughts here. So, we are at our segment, as always, where we share just any kind of random thoughts or branding tidbits or snippets, tips, tricks, all the things. And we take turns doing this. So, Jamie, it is your turn today. Will you please talk branding to me?
Well, listeners, as Jesse had mentioned previously at the time of this recording, we are in the middle of the Winter Olympics in Milano and Cortina. Admittedly, I'm a branding nerd, but I also really love the Olympics. As I was kind of thinking about what I would talk about today and this concept of legacy brands, I realized I think one of the reasons why I really love the Olympics is because of the brand. I assume that most of our listeners are probably intrigued by the Olympics as well. For me personally, the Olympic brand is really what sits at the heart of the entire experience that comes around every 2 years. So to speak, we have a form of the Olympic Games, whether they're summer or winter. If you think about it, every games is in a different location, different countries, so a different part of the world for the most part, and they have one chance. There's one moment in time where the games and then, the host country of those games where they get to introduce themselves and show off to the world. Not to sound cliche, but really once that Olympic flame is lit at the end of the opening ceremonies, they always end on that note. The flame is lit. The games are open and there's no looking back. I've always thought that it was really fascinating, this process of how we have the Olympics just as a global brand. Arguably, we could probably define it as a legacy brand itself. But then we also have the individual game brands. We have, at least again at this recording, we've got the Winter Games of Milano and Cortina. That in and of itself is its own brand. We had the Paris Games back in 2024. That had its own brand. What I love about every Olympics that occurs is that there's sub brands that get to be created, and there's so much work and detail and intention that goes into crafting the brands of the individual games for each of the respective countries that are hosting. It's To me, it's such a fascinating exploration of not only design, but building a legacy brand as well. And that is something I just wanted to share with our listeners today. If you have any interest in just doing some exploring and getting some background context on how some of these brands were put together. The Olympic Games for the past several years, I believe, they have created actually these brand portals. They put them online and they walk you through the design process, the background of what the brand of the games is. We talk about branding is both strategy and style. That's exactly what they cover. They tell you, here's our core values, here's our mission, here's the local culture that we were wanting to infuse into the brand of these games. And then from all of that, this is how we design the logo. This is how we design the mascots, the medals, the torches, the ribbons that the medals are on. There's so many pieces to these brands that are created. They even also do typefaces and color palettes. I mean, it's mind-boggling just what goes into building out all of these brand assets. But they're designed not only to work cohesively at the local or regional level, but they also are under the umbrella of the larger Olympic Games brand too. If you want to do a deep dive into some branding strategy and nerd out on some brand design and just learn more about what went into creating some of the brands of the recent games, I'm going to put in our show notes some links. So if you're interested, just go click and go read. Paris was absolutely fascinating to me because they designed their logo to look like a woman and also an Olympic flame. There's some really great meaning behind it that once I learned it, just fascinating. Who came up with this? This is so great. Go nerd out on the Olympic branches. Go see the beautiful creativity, thoughtfulness, and intention that was put into building out these brands. And also You could even look ahead. We've got the Summer Games in Los Angeles coming up in 2028, and they've already launched their brand. And it's extremely multifaceted. They intentionally have come up with a lot of different logos for the event, and but there's a story behind why they're doing that. If you are a fan of branding and or even just design in general, actually, or even a fan of the Olympic Games in general, and you want to learn more, highly recommend that you just follow along because this is just peak brand strategy and design that we could all probably take some lessons from. So there you have it.
I love that. Well, I have been, of course, watching everything the last couple of weeks, I guess going on probably a couple of weeks now. And I love the aesthetic. Like, I love that purpley blue gradient kind of color palette. I'm noticing it just on the signage
It
and
feels like a
around the
90s
ring.
throwback.
It
Would you
is. And
agree?
yeah, I would. And you know what else? To take it a step further, just for a moment, watching the ice skating, of course. I'm watching the ladies yesterday. I noticed how not all of them, but several, and some of the couples, some of the pairs as well, they have coordinated, or maybe it's coincidence, but I would think some of them have coordinated their beautiful with the coloring in the rink. Just some of that Olympic, that color palette that's being used and that flowy sort of aesthetic. I have noticed some of the purpley blue, silver kind of costumes that, again, whether it was planned or not, go very well, complement the branding that you see inside of the rink. But you're right, all of the details, all of the touch points. As a branding expert, I'm watching just like a normal spectator, like anyone else. But I'm also going, oh wow, that matches. Oh, look at that. Look at that typography. It's really cool how they designed that over there. And probably any designer or branding pro listening to this is probably nodding their head like, yeah, I've been doing the same thing. They did a really good job. It's a very pretty, beautiful brand. I'm sure there are probably a lot of nods to also just like the history and culture. And like you said, it's a great way for a country, especially a lot of these countries and cities that have been around for a really long time. It allows them to really kind of show off their history and tie the past with the present in these modern games, which I think is really cool. So thanks for sharing that.
You are welcome. And again, for those who are listening, check out the Milano Cortina link because they've got all kinds of really great videos talking about how they came up with their logo and their other graphic assets that we were just speaking about. Enjoy. Do that deep dive, grab a cup of coffee and just have fun learning about how they pulled all of this together.
Yeah, I know you had shared a website, Jamie. I was looking at it the other day and I think it's super interesting. But I also love and respect that, and this is another good lesson probably for anyone. This planning, this brand execution, like takes years. They're doing it years in advance because they know what's coming. They're not throwing this together in 6 months. They've been working on it a really long time. So when you are also trying to maybe do something within your own brand quickly or you want to see something overnight, just know really, really good branding done well does also take time.
Absolutely. And that is a hill
So,
we will probably die on too.
yeah, probably
Add
so,
that to the
as
list.
usual, of the many hills that we claim we are going to die on. All of the
Jesse, we're
branding
gonna
hills.
die in a mountain range. That's where we're gonna end up.
No, right? Oh my gosh, that's funny. All right, Jamie. Well, I think that is all we have for today. So thank you to everyone listening and check back in soon for another episode of Talk Branding to Me. We'll see you later. Thanks for listening to Talk Branding to Me. If today's conversation sparked a new way of thinking about your brand, we'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a fellow business owner who's ready to think deeper about branding and have fun with it too.
For more branding insights, behind the scenes conversations, and resources to support your brand journey, connect with us at Embellish Brands and at Untethered Design on social media.
Don't forget, branding is more than just aesthetics. It's both strategy and style.
Until next time, remember, you're fully capable of building a brand you're proud of, and we're here cheering you on every step of the way.